What's in a brand name? What's in a watch brand name? Apparently there is a lot. When you think about a name like Rolex, Rolex actually means nothing. However, that name really translates well through to other languages, and it means now a quality watch that people throughout the world, when you hear the name Rolex, you think of a well-made watch. There are a lot of watch brands out there. There are a lot of watch names out there. Today I'm going to talk about 10 that I think are funny, that I think aren't very good, and I'm going to get right into it. The first one on my list is one that I'm going to pronounce wrong on purpose and sort of prove my point of that Rolex name that means nothing and is easy to say in any language. That is Junkers. Junkers, Junkers, is a brand that is German. They make a whole bunch of different watches. They might have a Miyota movement. They could have an ETA or a Swiss movement in them. However, they make a ton of watches. All of them have Junkers on the dial. It's actually pronounced Junkers, which is not very apparent to a person that's in the United States. Now, I say that because a lot of people know how to pronounce this word. However, in the United States, if you show your watch, your Junkers, to an average person on the street who has no idea about watches, has no idea about what a Junkers is, they are going to pronounce it as Junkers and not Junkers. That's just a fact. That's just the way it is. There's not people watching videos on pronunciations. They don't know how to pronounce these words, and they won't know how to pronounce it. So it doesn't translate well into English. And that's not a good name, in my opinion. And I think it's kind of funny because there's someone in the United States that owns one of these watches and has no idea how it's actually pronounced, because not everybody's a watch collector and not everybody actually cares. Next on my list is B Swiss. And actually, I'm going to sort of tie this in with another brand as well. There is D Swiss as well. So this is the 2 and 3 on this list. B Swiss is actually owned by a company that should know better. That's Bucherer. Bucherer make amazing watches. Carl F. Bucherer makes some amazing watches that use ETA-powered movements. They also use Solita, but they also have their own in-house movements. They are a sort of a manufacturer, but they are also a jewelry brand. They are also a reseller of other brand watches. They're owners of Tourneau as well. So they're actually a very big brand, and they have their own watch brand. It's actually successful, which is very rare. They make good-looking watches. However, they have a lower line. That more affordable line is called B Swiss. And I think that is a hilariously bad name. And they don't do well, and they actually stopped making these recently. They all had ETA-powered movements or Solita-powered movements. They were Swiss-made, but they used the name B Swiss, B, the letter B, and then the word Swiss. Didn't make much sense, and I'm sure that's the reason why it wasn't very successful. Now, the other watch that I mentioned was D Swiss, or Dwiss. Very hard to say. It's Dwiss, and that is one of the worst names I think that I've ever seen on a watch brand. Dwiss. I just kind of picture myself when I'm meeting somebody and they say, hey, that's a really nice watch on your wrist. What kind of watch is that? If they're a collector, if they're not a collector, and you go Dwiss, it sounds weird. Or if you say B Swiss or Bwiss or whatever you want to say, it's just a weird way. It's just a weird name for a watch brand. Dwiss does not sound like you are actually saying the word correctly. They might say, wait, what is that again? Swiss? I understand it might be a Swiss watch, but what's the name of the brand? Dwiss. It's like who's on first. It doesn't sound good. It's just a really funny name. They make some interesting watches. Some of them aren't so great. Some of them are pretty cool. They recently came out with an integrated bracelet watch. I believe it's called the M3, and it looks really good. They have an interesting way of telling the time. However, I do not like the name of the brand, and that is a big problem for me. Every time I look down at the name Dwiss, I'm just not going to like it, and I'm not going to want to look at it. It's just that simple. Next on the list is a watch brand I actually love. It is Ball. Ball makes some amazing watches, but I just don't like the name brand. A lot of jokes get flown around when you start talking about Ball watches, and we can get into what type of jokes. They're definitely not clean jokes, so I'm not going to get into them on this video. But and again, when we're talking about people who don't know about watches, don't know that Ball is pretty awesome of a brand. It's kind of a funny name. Next on the list is PINUS. Now, PINUS is just a horrible name for many, many reasons. One of the reasons is because it's sort of a copy of Panerai, which is a good name, and they went and used a couple of different letters. They switched it up a little bit, and they came up with the name of PINUS, which is extremely close to penis. Now, another sort of issue like I had with the Ball name brand, this is another problem that I have with PINUS. It is so close to the word penis, it's kind of hilarious. I don't like the name. I think it's a weird name, and they don't make great watches either. They make mostly homage watches that aren't very high quality. I've never actually featured one on the channel. I've handled a few. I don't like them. They're always for sale on eBay. Not that great. Next is a brand that I've actually featured on this channel, and I've featured a few of these other watches that I've already mentioned, like Ball and Dwiss, or Dwiss. But there is Watchchris. Watchchris is a Japanese brand. It's a Japanese micro brand. Not many Japanese micro brands out there. However, they don't make incredibly great watches. Some of them are actually pretty good and priced pretty well. They get the ST19 in them, which is great. They're hand wound, chronograph movements, really good looking. Some of them are really expensive for no reason and not that great in quality. The chronographs are really what is their bread and butter. They make some really good looking chronographs actually at a pretty good price. So what I made videos about Watchchris watches, in the comments in those videos, English and Australian viewers constantly reminded me how close this name is to wanker. I thought it was pretty funny, and a lot of people actually added that comment. So many that it was overwhelming that I needed to mention it in one of the videos that I did later on of a full review of one of their watches. It's pretty funny. Next on the list is another watch that I featured on the channel, and I will feature in the future. I actually love their watches, and I think they kind of tried to go the route of Rolex, and they named their brand Formax. Formax make awesome watches. They are really good watches, really good looking watches. However, Formax, now for me, is a fine name. It doesn't really bother me. I've actually owned a Formax in the past. It was an actual very sentimental watch of mine. However, Formax itself, a lot of people think sound like a feminine product or maybe an eye drop. So there's a lot of brands out there that sort of sound like Formax, which is unfortunate because I do think they're a great brand. I think they make great watches, and they are pretty much stuck with these names because you're not going to change your name of your brand midway. It's impossible to do it. So that's the name that they're stuck with. If you want a good watch, Formax are awesome. Unfortunately, the name is something that you'll have to just deal with. Next on my list is a really funny name and a brand that's been around for a very long time. They're a Swiss brand. They're independently owned. They make a really cool dive watch. It's called the Seascoper. They're not incredibly well known, and they are Titoni. Now, I know I don't pronounce that right. It's Titoni, and however it's pronounced, it doesn't matter because in the United States, if I showed this name to anyone, they would immediately read it as Titoni, and that is just unfortunate. The spelling is, it is what it is, and people who don't know how to pronounce this correctly, it sounds like an Italian name. It's a Swiss brand. Just doesn't work. That's it. Another one that I have on this list is Dwiss. Dwiss is D-Watch, but I think it is actually pronounced Dwiss. And they make actually some really good looking dive watches. It's an American brand. And unfortunately, going in the same direction as Dwiss and B-Swiss, Dwiss or D-Watch, it just doesn't work. It's just a weird name. You're putting a letter in front of a word, and then you're making another word with that. And you should just come up with something original, something different. This is original. It is different, but just not in a good way, in my opinion. Dwiss, B-Swiss, Dwiss, or D-Watch, not very good. Last but not least, and I had to bring this name up because tons of people make fun of the name of this watch brand, including myself, and that is Felipe Loretti. It's not very easy to say, and it's hilarious. It just sounds like an Italian name generator made this name. It's hilarious. They're not an Italian brand, but they named themselves Filippo Loretti, trying to make themselves sound as Italian as possible, as humanly possible. I'm half Italian, and this name is hilarious. It sounds like when someone is pretending to speak Italian who does not know how to speak Italian whatsoever, and they just come out with a whole bunch of words. Spaghetti, Filippo Loretti. It's just really hilarious. And a lot of YouTubers, a lot of other people just in general in comments and things like that love to make fun of Filippo Loretti and the name Filippo Loretti. It's a terrible name. It's a hilarious name. And unfortunately, there might be a guy walking around this earth whose name is Filippo Loretti. And that poor guy, I swear to God, I feel bad for him. But anyway, tell me what you guys think of this list that I put together of bad watch names. I know there's plenty more out there. Again, I say this is always a part one. There will be a part two if I could come up with more. I like to think about these things. I know I'm a little weird, but I think it's fun, and hopefully you guys found this fun. Some of these brands are great. Some of them aren't so great, but all of them have bad names. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you could think of any others, please definitely add it in the comments below. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It's super helpful for the channel. I very much appreciate it. Please follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is Watchchris Blog. I have some links in the description. Those links are to Amazon. If you click those links and buy anything, it helps support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything extra. However, I very much appreciate it. Anyway, thank you for logging on. I'll catch you guys in the next video.